Well, hello again, COS supporters, and welcome back to another edition of COS Live. My name is Andrew Luce. I'll be your host for this episode, and I'm joined by Rita Peters, who's my co-host, but she's also the Senior Vice President for Legislative Affairs. Rita, we have some breaking news today. Some big stuff just happened. Will you please get our viewers caught up and do the honors of letting them know what just happened?
Well, it is indeed an honor, Andrew. Just moments ago, the full Wyoming Senate voted by a vote of 22 ayes, 7 noes, and there were 2 absences. So 22-7 voted to pass our Convention of States application SJ1. So we have officially now passed the Wyoming Senate. That was third and final reading just now. And, we had originally expected that there would be a debate. Usually on the final reading, there is some debate about the bill, and in particular about Convention of States. We usually hear some passionate speeches, mostly for, usually some against. But today, our bill sailed through without objection, without debate. There was actually a little bit of debate yesterday on second reading, which is kind of unusual. So the process was a little bit different than what we expected to see in the Wyoming Senate, but hey, we will take it. This is a resounding victory, such a strong vote. Again, it was 22-4, only 7 Wyoming senators opposed. So Convention of States application now goes over to the House side, and we've got a real race now to see which state will become state number 20 to pass our Article 5 application. Of course, the number one competitor at the moment is South Dakota. South Dakota expected to have its House committee hearing next week. So this has been an exciting day, Andrew. And procedurally, what happened was they actually decided to put our Convention of States application on what's known as the consent list. So that's a list of bills that basically the legislators have decided they don't need to debate anymore. Everyone kind of knows where they are on them. So they put all these bills on one list, and then they just go through and vote on them one after the other. They have a chance to change their vote, but they just do it really quickly. So that's what happened. It's really exciting.
Super exciting. And, I will comment that that Wyoming is only a week behind South Dakota. So I'd say this race is neck and neck right now. I'm really excited to see what happens in South Dakota, and then also to see what happens in Wyoming. So Rita, you're commenting on how the procedure was a little different than what was expected. So we do have some video footage that producer G has put together from that second reading that we'll get to in a little bit. So there's some great moments in there during the debate that we'd like to share with our viewers. But before we get to that, we want to bring in Regional Director Deanna Beckett just to get her reaction to this. And you know what? She basically has been on this program every single day that we've been on. So it's great to be with her again. And here she is, Deanna. So what's your take on what just happened, and how are you feeling right now?
It is a great feeling. I'm not tired of winning, that's for sure. The team is just on the ball, on fire. Our state director, Julie Baker, is way ahead of the game in messaging. The legislators know this stuff in and out, and our supporters, our champions are standing for us, and it's exciting to see. Yeah, two of my states neck and neck for number 20.
Deanna, why do you think the debate was so short? As we've said, there was no debate at all today. It was put on the consent list. Yesterday, there was just 12 minutes of debate, which is not much by our usual standards. We often see legislatures spend upwards of 30 minutes and sometimes way more than that on Convention of States. Did the initial vote on first reading tell the story, or what do you think was behind that?
The only thing I can estimate that's behind it would be the work of the grassroots for years and years and years, and how we've come beside these legislators, maybe in other issues, but also education. I think our teams have been on the ground educating. I know we've had multiple events in in variety of areas, from Cody down to Casper in Cheyenne. I know I'm missing a place, but the team has been talking to their legislators all this time, and that would be my assumption of the answer to your question.
That's a good answer.
One thing I've noticed, Deanna, is that you've been running around with your hair on fire, going from state to state. I mean, you've been traversing everywhere. North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, I believe you went there as well, and Montana. Sorry if I didn't get all of them correct, but you've been going around a lot. And I'm sorry if I missed a few. You've been crazy busy, but you're not done yet in Wyoming. What happens next?
Happens next is what's interesting is Julie's already got the messaging ready. So I love it that she's already on the ball. So we're going to be messaging starting in the House. And so it goes over to the House committee. We'll be gathering all that info and that communications and getting that sent out and start working in the House. And as Rita has probably mentioned before, it's a little heavier bar to lift in the House, but we're going to give it our best.
Deanna, while we have you, do you want to give us an update on any of your other states? Of course, South Dakota was our first chamber victory of the year on the Senate side. Do you expect that we'll see some movement on the House side soon, and any other states you want to report on?
Absolutely. South Dakota, we have a rally scheduled with Senator Rick Santorum and our co-founder, Mark Meckler, coming up this Sunday night, February 2nd. And then regarding South Dakota, we're waiting with our nails biting for time and date of hopefully that House committee. We've been assigned to the State Affairs Committee, House State Affairs. And then a little nugget from North Dakota, we finally got our vote in the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's hard to keep all these straight, and I'm doing it without notes. Senate Judiciary Committee in North Dakota suggested that there was a rescission effort that was brought in North Dakota, and it was suggested that a do not pass out of that committee. So that will be heading to the Senate floor, and we want those senators to uplift that recommendation by the committee. And then, of course, there's multiple other things. I don't know which ones you want me to mention, Rita, but those are the two highlights that I've got.
I think that's enough to keep us busy for now, Deanna. Thank you so much for being with us. And I know you've got a lot more work to do. So thanks for being with us. And I think we're going to see you on the program again very soon, Deanna.
Very, very soon. Well, thank you for dropping by, Deanna. Great to have you with us. Okay, so Rita, we're going to be playing some footage from yesterday, or not yesterday's, but the second reading on the Wyoming Senate floor. So there's some great golden nuggets there during that debate. But before we get to that, Deanna was mentioning how she's having a hard time keeping everything straight and she doesn't have her notes. And you know what? I think our viewers are probably having a hard time keeping everything straight because everything is moving at lightning speed right now. Can you just kind of give a national recap of what's been going on, particularly here out in the West? Because we're getting a lot of action in the West right now. We've said that the Wild West is on fire for COS right now, and it truly is. So can you give just a quick national update on what's going on?
Sure, Andrew. Well, last Tuesday, our first chamber victory of the year went to the South Dakota Senate, which passed our resolution by a vote of 23-9. COS Action's Article 5 application now makes its way through the South Dakota House to achieve final passage. So the home of Mount Rushmore is in the driver's seat at the moment to become state number 20 on our way to that magic number of 34 states to get to convention. But as you've seen, Wyoming is now hot on its heels because of today's victory in the Wyoming Senate. Now, this past Friday, there was a hearing in the Montana House Business and Labor Committee. The COS Montana team packed that committee room, and Michael Ferris provided expert testimony. Ferris gave huge kudos and a nice public shout out to the COS Montana team, saying it was the best presentation of our resolution he had ever seen. And now a hearing is scheduled in New Hampshire for this Friday at 9:45 a.m. Eastern Time. We expect Senator Rick Santorum to be there giving expert testimony for that one. So tune in to see our broadcast of that live at conventionofstates.com/COS live. In the 2025 session so far, our resolution is being considered by 12 states with more to come. But so far, we've got Connecticut, Kansas, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Montana, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Rhode Island, South Dakota, Texas, and Wyoming. One more to add to that list, we've got Iowa now on file as well. 19 states have already passed the resolution calling for an Article 5 convention for proposing amendments to the U.S. Constitution on 3 topics: imposing fiscal restraints on the federal government, limiting its power and jurisdiction, and putting term limits on federal officials and members of Congress. Those states that have already passed are Georgia, Alaska, Alabama, Florida, Indiana, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Tennessee, North Dakota, Arizona, Missouri, Texas, Arkansas, Mississippi, Utah, Nebraska, Wisconsin, West Virginia, and South Carolina. So we need 15 more states to hit that magic number of 34.
Awesome, Rita. I don't know if you saw this or not, but Mark Meckler has joined us. So we get another special treat getting to listen to our president and founder, Mark Meckler. Great to have you with us, Mark. What's your immediate reaction to what just happened?
I'm not getting tired of winning. I don't know about you guys, but it feels great. This is a great way to start the year. I don't want to overstate it. We still have to make it through the House there. I think the Senate was always going to be the easier lift, a little bit harder in the House. But I think it's also going to be hard for the House to look at this result, this lopsided result in the Senate, and not react positively. There are going to be folks in the House. I think there's a lot of freshmen in the House that we might not know exactly where they stand. And they're going to look at this and they're going to think, well, maybe I should vote for this. I know that we have a bunch of undecideds, and those undecideds hopefully are going to flip our way because of what happened here in the Senate. There's a race on now, right? To see, is South Dakota going to be number 20? Is Wyoming going to be number 20? Who knows what's going to happen? I'm going to be out in South Dakota next week, but it could be Wyoming first. I'm not placing any bets. I'm for all of them.
Well, Mark, you mentioned that there is more work to be done on the House side in Wyoming. That is certainly the case. And our grassroots is out there doing that work. I want to give a shout out to Julie Baker, our Wyoming state director. She is just top notch. She knows her stuff. She knows those legislators, and she's working hard. She has worked hard to get to this moment where we saw this resounding victory in the Wyoming Senate. And so, Julie, if you're watching, thank you and congratulations. Keep up the good work. And we at National are here to serve you because that's the way we work, right, Mark?
Yeah, one of the interesting things to me is, and this is becoming a theme as we go through this, is we've been working there for a long time. Julie's been with us for a long time. She drives all the way across the state to get to the Capitol. She's been just a warrior in the trenches. And it's kind of this feeling when you start to have victories, people can look at you from outside and say, wow, this is all happening so fast. But the reality is it's been a lot of work over a long period of time by a lot of people. And you and I get to come on here on COS Live, and Andrew, and we can be the quote unquote stars of the show. The real stars of the show are people like Julie Baker out there in the field doing the actual hard work on the ground in the states, making this stuff happen.
Mm-hmm. Mark, while we got you, what's your call to action to all the grassroots right now? I mean, it's been pretty amazing to see how we've just out of the gate, we just hit the ground running, and we hit the ground running hard. But what's the call to action right now as we move to other states and as our legislation moves to the Wyoming House and the South Dakota House? What's the big call to action to everyone right now?
Yeah, it's run harder. I mean, I think there's a natural tendency to throw up your hands as you cross that tape and break the tape and celebrate, but we're not there yet. In the legislatures right now in this session, we haven't broken the tape. We don't break the tape until we get both houses in the same legislative session. And so run harder. And what that means for us as activists is it means contact your legislator. If you're in Wyoming, contact those who voted yes and thank them and profusely thank them for being willing to step up and work to save our country. And frankly, even if your legislator voted no, thank them for participating in the process. Be different than other organizations. Be thankful that they're there in the Capitol doing it. Specifically, if you're in Wyoming or in South Dakota, you've got a new House hearing this. You need to contact those legislators. Let them know you're in favor. One of the things that we have that happens all over the country, we need to be very careful about this and wary of this, is we have our opponents will call nationally. In other words, they'll have their whole organization nationwide descend upon, whether it's the Wyoming House or it's the South Dakota House. We don't do that because we respect legislators, we respect their time, and we know the people that they want to hear from are their constituents. So we're going to encourage you, if you're a constituent in the South Dakota House, contact your representative. In the Wyoming House, contact your representative now, like literally right now. Even if you shut us off and go to your phone and contact your representative, we're good with that. Contact your representative today, no matter what.
Yeah, and I would say, Mark, for those watching who aren't already plugged in with Convention of States, you're not already a part of our team, go to conventionofstates.com, which is our website, and click on the Take Action tab, and then scroll down and find your state. And that's how you can get started and also get plugged in with your state team.
Yeah, I really love that.
Yeah, I want to throw something else out there. You know, we come, we talk about the victories we're having in the legislatures, but there's victories happening that are not legislative victories. I don't know if everybody who's listening or watching this saw this week, we had a huge thing happen, which was Mark Levin came on there and he was talking about what a great president Donald Trump is. And before he led into how much he was going to talk about that Donald Trump was doing, he wanted to build up his own conservative credentials. You know, Mark has been a leader of the conservative movement for literally 5 decades now. 50 years he's been in the conservative fight. And so he wanted to lay out some of the things that he's done that prove that he's a conservative leader. And we were humbled and honored by the fact that Mark elevated Convention of States. And he said, one of the things you should know about me is I was a leader in the Tea Party movement, wrote Liberty and Tyranny, and I was an early leader in the Convention of States movement. And he said, along with the Convention of States organization with over 5 million people out there, my friend Mark Meckler. And then, so you have Mark Levin doing it as if that's not a great enough honor, not humbling enough. President Trump took that clip and put it out on Truth Social, which then gets re-sent out on X by everybody. And so you have millions upon millions of people seeing Convention of States, probably most of them for the very first time. Mark Levin saying, look, one of the reasons I'm credible is this is an organization that I've helped, a cause that I believe in, that I've helped lead. And so to have that kind of a thing just happen, and I say just happen, I mean that in the sense that it's not that it's random. It happened because we've worked for years. You with us have worked for years to build these relationships, to have the credibility out in the field that Mark Levin would hold you up. It's less about me than you, hold you up as a nationwide organization that he's proud to have supported and proud to have been there since the beginning. So that's a huge one. I saw a mention on Sean Hannity's Substack this week. I was on Chris Salcido's show on Newsmax, and that got picked up on Hannity's Substack. So I'm telling you these things because I want you to understand there's broad momentum that extends out from the legislatures and actually comes back and has an effect in the legislatures. There's a lot of stuff going on out there. If you haven't seen this, the current Trump administration is filled with people who are Convention of States supporters. J.D. Vance is a Convention of States supporter. Vivek, of course, he's not part of DOJ anymore, but he was. He's a COS supporter. You have Brooke Rollins, who's going to be our ag secretary, is a Convention of State supporter. You have Mike Huckabee, who's going to be ambassador to Israel. You have Caroline Levitt, who's the press secretary, is a Convention of State supporter. I mean, these are incredible numbers of people that are in close to the president of the United States. If you haven't already done this, go to conventionofstates.com/Trump, sign our open letter to Trump saying, look, time for Donald Trump to be on board. And I got to tell you, behind the scenes, I can't say exactly what. There's some stuff going on in Congress right now. A lot of members of Congress starting to realize we need a Convention of States if we're going to cement the long-term legacy, maybe of some of the changes that are going to be made by this administration. So while I'm celebrating the victories taking place here in the legislatures, especially in Wyoming today, I want you guys to know there's a much bigger picture. There's a lot of movement for Convention of States right now in all areas all over the country.
Oh, Mark, what a way to get us all fired up. I love it. Just, I mean, lining them up and knocking them down. I mean, and then your call to action, hang up with us and get out there and call your legislator. I just love that so much. Before we let you go, any other appeals to the grassroots or anything else that you'd like to say to our viewers?
Yeah, look, it doesn't matter what state you're in, contact your legislator and tell them that you support Convention of States. And this is true. People would say, well, I'm in a past state. Why does it matter? I'm in Alabama or Georgia. It matters because the legislature's turnover. There are often rescission efforts. We just defeated a rescission effort in committee in North Dakota, 5-1. That's another victory today. Those things are going to happen. Your legislators still need to hear from you, even if you're in a past state. And you might say, well, I'm in a state like California. I don't know if they'll ever pass this. Number one, I never give up on any state ever, no matter what. New York, California, Illinois, I don't care. We're going to fight in all those states. One of our best state teams in the country is in Illinois. They do a great job there. In Texas, while we passed it, we have an expiration clause on the Texas one. We need to repass that this session. So wherever you are, go to conventionofstates.com, sign up, sign that petition, click on the Take Action tab if you're not already a volunteer.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mark, for joining us today. Rita, thank you for breaking the amazing news that came out of Wyoming. It's been back-to-back banner weeks. We got more to cover. Friday, like you said, is going to be that hearing in New Hampshire. We're expecting Rick Santorum to be there to give expert testimony. But we're going to let our viewers go with one little treat. They get to watch the floor debate in the second reading of the Wyoming Senate. So that's going to be real exciting. Producer G is going to put that on. Go ahead and watch that, or take Mark's advice, hang up here, go right to reaching out to your legislator. Whatever you do, we got a country to save, so it's time to get back to work. Thanks for watching.
Mr. President, I just want to kind of explain my no vote on this. I'm still a COS skeptic. I totally agree with my colleagues in here on the premise of this action. But I'm just not convinced this is the right way to go. You know, they don't follow the Constitution right now, and I don't know if an amendment to it will change anything. I'm not entirely sure that a convention can be limited to certain amendments either. I don't think there's any precedent that could happen. You know, every amendment, all 27 amendments to the Constitution were done through Congress. So the only true convention that we've ever had was in 1787. And in my opinion, that weakened states' rights from the Articles of Confederation and centralized more power with the federal government. So again, I think everybody's on the right track with this, but I just wanted to explain myself and thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Ide. Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise in support of this measure. It will help the states is the high bar for ratification. That's what protects us from anything that happens in the convention. You'll be there. Only 13 states can block ratification. I have a hard time thinking how you could ever ratify something that's a change to our Constitution across our 50 states when 13 can block it. Think of all the things about the regional differences and all of that. I don't know exactly what will happen at the convention, but I know that because of the ratification process, we have every tool that we would ever need. And it's not, you can ratify it by convention, but legislatures can ratify it. And if we choose to ratify it, we're going to talk about it on this floor. Don't you think we're going to have a serious discussion? Be a very powerful little Wyoming among 13 that could change the course of history. That's pretty awesome. Now, as to whether they're going to ignore it or not, you know, there are different interpretations of the Constitution. There's those of you that look at the black and white print and say, this isn't happening. And you'll look at things and you'll say, they aren't following the Constitution. That's your opinion. The actual court opinions about the Constitution would fill this room. And they're very detailed, and they're expansive, and they tell us about constitutionality. And the Supreme Court rules on constitutionality all the time, with consequences. You may not approve the fact that you don't even think they should be involved in approving the Constitution or the things, but that's what Marbury versus Madison gave us. That is the banking one about the Bank of Maryland. Those great court cases, which Chief Justice Marshall and others gave us the interpretation. But the thing is, we can't get the court to rule on an interpretation unless we have something there that is tightly defined and says the limits. Then they'll have to rule in our favor. The only way we can do that, Congress isn't going to pass anything. They're not going to limit their powers. They're not going to limit the budget. We have to do it. Convention of the States is the way to do it. Let's keep moving.
Thank you. Let's go to Senator Landon and then Senator Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, that's, I have never voted for this bill in all my years serving in the Wyoming Senate until first reading this year. And a lot of what finally has given me a little bit of comfort was just stated by the good senator from Fremont County. But the other piece of it for me is we can't keep doing the same thing over again and expecting different results. And even the administrations that we've had a lot of faith in, those of us who have a more fiscally conservative way about us, even those administrations have kind of let us down, Mr. President. We just continue to add to the national debt. You know, I look at my kids and my grandkids and I think, wow, when does this end, you know? The piece of it that finally gave me enough comfort, Mr. President, is that we do get to bring it back here and we get to talk about it. I've always worried about, you know what, Wyoming loses in things like this. We go back there, we got the right coast and we got the left coast, and that's where all the populations are, and things get going, and I just have always worried about that convention getting way out of hand and Wyoming just getting trampled. Worried a little bit about who we're going to send back there. But you know what? I'm ready to vote for this. I think it's the time. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Driscoll.
Mr. President, thank you. We're under a time deal on and for great foundation, watching people get behind this that haven't before. It's the right thing. I'll give the same analogy. It's kind of like the good senator from Bates, great guy, Skip, give his talk every year. This is mine. Envision yourself, we're all going the wrong direction. We know it. Everyone here knows where we're at. You're on an airplane and the pilot has a heart attack. You're heading for the ground. Do you go to the back and buckle yourself in and hope for the best, or you try to fly the plane? Folks, this is the only way we've got to get a handle on this. This is a common sense measure that does the right thing. Let's get it out and do it. If you don't do it, you can guess what the results are. We're as red as we've ever been. Back to the 13 states, this is the best opportunity we've ever had to have it our way. Let's take advantage of it.
Thank you. Senator Scott.
Mr. President, something to think about before we vote on this in the final tomorrow. The Constitution of the United States has been the most successful political document that's ever been enacted anywhere in the world. Stood the test of time. It works. This is a special way of amending it. The only precedent was when they ignored the charge from the Articles of Confederation and created the Constitution, they got that right the first time. I'm not so sure about a second time. And Mr. President, I think we all assume it's going to turn out the way we want it to. It may not come back here. Congress chooses to send it to specially elected conventions in each state. That's a different way of ratifying it. They can do that. I don't think we can control what they do. I think we're all assuming, well, it's called to put a stop to this problem that we see. I don't trust some of the rest of the country to not try to make the problem worse. And just because it's what we want doesn't mean we're going to get it. Mr. President, I think we're playing with fire with this and any of the other Article 5 calls for constitutional convention. I think we need to think very hard about that between now and third reading tomorrow.
Senator Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. On and for, explained myself when I first got here, I didn't support it. And I honestly didn't know enough about it, didn't feel comfortable about it. And I will add to say that I do support it now because there's there's circuit breakers, there's safeties with this. The runaway convention theory doesn't hold water because anything that happens has to come back here and ratified both by the Senate and the House. And that's our safety breaker if things go south. And it is going to be a very slim margin of states signing on to this. So I believe that doing the same thing and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. And that's where we're at. We've got it. Everyone wants to complain, and I agree with them that the federal government is out of control. We don't have term limits. People are there till I guess they pass away. And this is a mechanism that we can affect to make a change. We have a budget that's not balanced. They print money, puts us in a terrible position because now we are dealing with runaway inflation, which devalues our money and your savings and everyone else's money. This is a mechanism to move this conversation forward. I think the circular argument that says that, well, the Constitution's perfect and we shouldn't touch it, well, this is within that body of work. It's in there for this very reason why we're talking about it. Today, we have lost states' rights. And this is a way that we can bring this back for Wyoming to have a say-so in our destiny and our future. So I am on and for Senate Joint Resolution number 1. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Senator Hicks.
So, Mr. President, having been here for a number of times and listened to this debate over and over and over for a number of years, one of the things that always strikes me is this isn't the first time this debate occurred. In fact, it occurred historical context back at the ratifying conventions. And if you want to know what the purpose of Article 5 is, rather than us reinvent what the original intent is, just go read the Federalist Papers that were put out there. And it basically says, the purpose of Article 5 is at some point in time, our founders realized that there may be a runaway by our federal government. This provided the check by the states for our ability in those times where we felt that there might be a runaway with the federal government. I would encourage each and one of you, I think it's Federalist number 43. We don't need to debate what the purpose and what the need and what it was intended for. The founders have already given us that. The intent is to put a check on the federal government. And so Article 5 is there for explicit reasons. And if you think that $36 trillion debt is runaway, irresponsible federal government, then maybe it's time that we exercise Article 5. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Question being called. Senate Joint Resolution 1 having been read 2 separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered.